from our Toronto studios. This is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I am Ahmed Ramadan. Newly released documents raise questions about how a sacred cloth from the Kaaba ended up linked to Jeffrey Epstein. This and more on today's show. Meanwhile, documents outline how convicted sex offender and American financier Jeffrey Epstein acted as a discreet go-between connecting political and business elites linked to India, Israel, and the United States. Messages show Epstein facilitating contact between Indian billionaire Anil Ambani and former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. This was before Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's first ever visit to Israel in 2017. In separate exchanges, Ambani told Epstein that what he called leadership wanted his help to arrange urgent meetings in Washington with senior figures close to President Donald Trump. The messages further sought help in arranging meetings with Jared Kushner and Steve Bannon ahead of Modi's planned visit. Analysts say Modi's 2017 trips to Washington and Tel Aviv marked a major shift in India's foreign policy, accelerating defense, technology, and intelligence cooperation with the US and Israel. In one email sent after the Israeli visit, Epstein claimed the outreach had worked, which analysts say suggests close monitoring of the diplomatic outcomes. India's foreign ministry has rejected references to Epstein's emails, calling them baseless and contemptible, while stopping short of addressing Epstein's broader role as an intermediary. Newly released files show that sacred cloth from the Kaaba in Mecca was shipped to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein through contacts linked to the United Arab Emirates or UAE. Emails from early 2017 reveal that UAE-based businesswoman Aziza Al-Ahmadi worked with Abdullah Al-Mari to organize the shipment of 3 pieces of the kiswa. The kiswa is the black, gold-embroidered cloth draped around the Kaaba, Islam's holiest site in Saudi Arabia. For Muslims worldwide, the Kaaba is the focal point of prayer, and the kiswa holds deep religious significance. The correspondence shows the pieces were flown from Saudi Arabia to Florida and delivered to Epstein's residence. The shipment included 1 piece from inside the Kaaba, 1 from the outer covering, and a 3rd unused piece listed as artwork for customs purposes. Epstein was a wealthy U.S. financier, later exposed as a central figure in a global sex trafficking network that included crimes against minors. Separately, an FBI memo released Friday said Epstein worked with U.S. and Israeli intelligence. The probe further reveals he had close ties to former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. Israel has ordered the international medical charity Doctors Without Borders, also known as MSF, to halt operations in Gaza and the occupied West Bank. The move comes amid a wider crackdown on humanitarian organizations. UN experts say Israel has suspended or moved to bar dozens of aid groups under new registration measures. Rights and aid groups say Israel is increasingly using paperwork demands and politicizing vetting as a gatekeeping tool rather than a neutral administrative process. In MSF's case, Israel demanded a list of Palestinian and international staff for security checks. In a statement, MSF confirmed that it initially agreed as an exceptional step to share staff names. However, it said Israeli authorities did not provide basic assurances on how the information would be used or protected. MSF warns that handing over staff identities without safeguards could put aid workers at risk, and it says the demand undermines humanitarian independence. Israel also alleged, without providing evidence, that 2 MSF employees had links to armed groups. MSF has strongly denied the allegations. As a result, Israel says MSF must leave Gaza by February 28 amid wider restrictions on humanitarian groups operating in the territory. Arab and Muslim majority countries have strongly condemned Israel's repeated violations of the Gaza ceasefire, warning that the attacks are sabotaging efforts to restore calm and stability. Reports from Gaza's government media office and a number of monitoring groups have found more than 1,450 documented breaches of the ceasefire by Israeli forces between October 10, when it was announced, and January 31st. Foreign ministers from Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, Pakistan, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia say the breaches have killed and wounded more than 1,000 Palestinians. In a joint statement, the ministers warned that Israel's actions risk escalating tensions and undermining political and humanitarian efforts in Gaza. They urged Israel and Hamas to meet their responsibilities and exercise restraint. They also renewed calls for a just and lasting peace based on Palestinian self-determination and statehood in line with the international law and UN resolutions. The condemnation followed heavy Israeli airstrikes on Gaza on Saturday that killed more than 30 people, including 3 girls from the same family, Palestinian health officials said. The strikes hit homes, tents for displaced families, and a police station. In Gaza, recovery teams have begun exhuming hundreds of Palestinians buried in a mass grave amid Israel's ongoing genocide in the region. Efforts are underway to exhume the remains of about 350 Palestinians buried during intense bombardment in October 2023. Civil defense teams, joined by forensic specialists and grieving relatives, began work at Tabin Cemetery in central Gaza City. The bodies are being transferred to Al-Shifa Hospital for identification and examination. They will later be reburied at a cemetery in Deir al-Balah following proper burial procedures. Officials say the dead were buried collectively and without order. At the same time, ongoing Israeli airstrikes made individual burials impossible. Many of the remains are still unidentified and badly decomposing. Working under Israel's blockade of humanitarian aid and other supplies, rescue teams are using basic tools and limited equipment. A local resident said the exhumation has reopened deep wounds, recalling how he was forced to bury his wife and son in a mass grave. Palestinian officials say Israeli attacks destroyed most cemeteries and forced mass burials inside hospitals. Observers say that for families, the process is about dignity, closure, and remembering the dead. A limited number of humanitarian aid trucks have entered Gaza through the Rafah border crossing, according to local sources. The crossing between Gaza and Egypt has reopened under what Israel media called as a limited trial after nearly 2 years of closure. Aid workers say the flow is still far below what's needed as Gaza's health system remains overwhelmed and thousands of sick and wounded people are waiting for evacuation. The first trucks crossed from Egypt into Gaza and moved south toward Khan Yunis, carrying basic humanitarian supplies for the first time since Israel captured the crossing last May. On the first day, medical sources said only 5 patients were permitted to leave for treatment, with ambulances waiting for hours. Israeli media described the reopening as a pilot operation, with movement expected to be restricted to pre-approved lists and limited hours. Egypt also announced that it will start transferring Palestinian patients to hospitals across the country, with ambulances and medical teams on standby at Rafah. Trump crypto deal triggers bribery accusation. Details coming up next.
My name is Layla. I was an average kid until Zula Inc. broke into my life because my dad discovered time travel. After that, everything changed.
You're the new girl Layla, right?
Whoa! What if I don't fit in?
Abdullah!
Do I hear my name?
Oh!
Welcome to Vancouver, cuz.
Whoa! Whoa!
You 4 have been specially chosen to take our project into the next generation.
You can time travel?
Abdullah! No! Abdullah! Where?
Do you really think I don't know why we had to leave Seattle, Mama?
Now here, keep these close. These should never leave your wrist.
This virtual reality game is crazy. You can even eat. This is reality, buddy. We zoomed through a wormhole.
Oh no, my Go Watch! It's gone!
What does this do?
That's Al-Khwarizmi. You know, the father of mathematics. It's because of him we have algorithms.
I will not stop until your legacy, everyone's legacy, lies in ruins. Of course it was you. You little rascals ruined everything.
Your fate will be great. Just don't give up.
Time Hoppers.
Welcome back. A report by the Wall Street Journal has raised fresh questions about corruption and foreign influence tied to President Donald Trump's family. The report says a member of Abu Dhabi's ruling family secretly backed $500 million investment in a Trump-linked cryptocurrency firm. The investments came months before the administration approved sensitive U.S. artificial intelligence chip access for the United Arab Emirates. According to the journal, Association of Sheikh Tahnoon bin Zayed signed a deal in early 2025 to buy nearly half of World Liberty Financial. That is a crypto startup tied to the Trump family and relatives of U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff. Documents show large payments were routed to Trump family entities and to firms linked to the Witkoff family. Weeks later, Tahnoon met Trump at the White House and discussed cooperation on AI technology. Soon after, the administration approved access to hundreds of thousands of advanced AI chips, despite earlier U.S. security concerns. Observers called the arrangement a clear bribe and one of the biggest scandals in U.S. history. Some warn future administrations could impose sanctions and freeze assets if corruption is proven. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, has halted all movement inside a federal immigration detention facility in Texas after a measles outbreak. Health officials in Texas said 2 detainees at the Dilley Immigration Processing Center outside San Antonio tested positive for active measles infections on January 31st. ICE said its Health Services Corps immediately moved to contain the outbreak. All internal movement was stopped, and individuals believed to have contact with the infected detainees were placed under quarantine. The facility, formerly known as the South Texas Family Residential Center, holds families with children awaiting deportation or immigration court hearings. The Department of Homeland Security said medical staff are closely monitoring detainees. The outbreak sparked protests outside the center on Sunday. The League of United Latin American Citizens called for the facility's closure, citing what it described as inhumane conditions. Nationwide, ICE is detaining more than 70,000 migrants, sharply up from about 40,000 a year ago. Black History Month began Sunday and is being observed this year as the 100th anniversary of organized celebrations honoring Black history and achievement. The annual observance runs through the end of February and is meant for all communities. The tradition dates back to 1926, when historian Carter G. Woodson launched Negro History Week through the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. February was chosen because it includes the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln, who was born on February 12, and Frederick Douglass, who marked his birthday in mid-February. In 1976, the observance expanded from 1 week to a full month and became known as Black History Month. This year's theme, A Century of Black History Commemorations, highlights the role of remembrance in building a more inclusive society. People are encouraged to attend events, visit exhibits, and explore family history through resources such as blackhistory.gov and the ASALH website. This year, the celebration comes amid the Trump administration's attack on initiatives to teach Black history across the country since he returned to office over a year ago. That includes President Donald Trump's executive order last March directing the elimination of what he described as improper, divisive, or anti-American ideology from programs at the Smithsonian Institution, which receives federal funding. Trump has blamed the Biden administration for advancing what he called corrosive ideology at the museums. In his executive order, Trump targeted specific organizations like the National Museum of African American History and Culture, accusing them of spreading what he claimed were divisive and race-centered ideas. A protest was held in the Netherlands against what demonstrators described as racist police violence targeting two Muslim women. The rally followed the circulation of a video showing a police officer assaulting the woman near the Haag Catherine shopping mall in the Dutch city of Utrecht. The footage shows one woman being struck with a baton and another kicked in the stomach. Protesters gathered at a central square in Utrecht, saying the incident was not an isolated case. They argued that racist violence by police occurs repeatedly and systematically. Demonstrators called on Dutch police to issue a public apology to the victims and the wider community. They also demanded assurances that similar incidents will not happen again. Calls were made for the suspension of the officer involved. Protesters chanted slogans including "No justice, no peace," and "No to racist police." The crowd later marched toward a local police station. Dutch police said an investigation has been launched and that all available video footage is being reviewed. The woman's lawyer told public broadcaster NOS the officer used racist language and that both women suffered injuries. They are both receiving medical treatment. The United States is cautiously re-engaging Mali in West Africa as geopolitical competition grows in the Sahel region. A senior U.S. official is traveling to the capital, Bamako, for talks with Mali's military-led government. The U.S. Bureau of African Affairs said senior bureau official Nick Checker will convey Washington's respect for Mali's sovereignty and seek to reset strained ties. The Sahel is a vast semi-arid belt south of the Sahara Desert. It includes countries such as Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Chad, and Sudan. The region has been marred by military coups, armed insurgencies, and years of instability. Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have formed the Alliance of Sahel States. The bloc has withdrawn from ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, a regional body that promotes trade, political cooperation, and democratic rule. The countries have also shifted security ties towards Russia. Experts say Washington's renewed outreach is driven by security concern and Mali's rich gold, lithium, and uranium reserves. They note the move reflects a broader U.S. effort to regain influence in a region increasingly contested by rival powers. That's all from our Toronto studios. Thank you for watching Muslim News. We are a community channel dedicated to bringing you stories you can trust. Please like, share, and subscribe to our content. You can also comment to let us know what you think of our coverage. You can donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV. Salam.